Hello and welcome to the History of the World with Jack Voorhees, AP World. Today we're talking about Africa, so let's get rolling. As we talked about, societies popped up along the Nile in very early times, but agriculture also popped up in different places, such as along the Congo River, along rivers and stuff like that. And then Central Africa along the equator is a very arable place. And in the ancient world, the Sahara Desert was a lot smaller, so the northern coast of Africa was much more lush and arable. So it was a pretty sweet place to be. So let's talk about some of the big civilizations of Africa that you should know for the AP World Test. So you have down around here. All right, so let's remember. So there was the Roman Empire, right? And then there's India. So there was trade networks that connected the two. There's some Central Asian stuff going on. But then the Romans would also trade down through the Red Sea across the Indian Ocean with the Indians. And civilizations that kind of popped up along those routes were Axum, and then a later version of Axum, which is Meroe, or whichever order those two come in. So Axum, it was a Christian country. They have these buildings called stelae. They're like tall, they're like obelisks. The Egyptians did obelisks, and Axum does that too. Meroe, I believe it was an iron center. Yeah. Yep. So, after you have Axum and Meroe. Okay, so another thing to understand is whenever we're talking about Egyptian Christianity, so remember, Christianity starts in Roman Judea, and Roman Egypt is pretty close to that. Those Egyptians, those native Egyptians who convert to Christianity are known as Copts. So that's C-O-P-T-S, the Copts, the Coptic Christians. And they're actually still Coptic Christians today. It's kind of like a separate ethnicity almost. Those who are Sunni in Egypt have kind of blended in more with the Arabs who moved in during the Arab invasion, but Copts are more similar to the people who were there even prior to Roman conquest in the 50s BC. So yeah, then you have there people who live in the Sahara, and then kind of a trade network pops up between like the Arab Muslims along the north coast of North Africa, and then the groups down in southwest, or like in the western part of Africa, across the Sahara Desert, trading gold and salt and similar stuff. So some of the kingdoms you get out of that, you get Ghana, and then Ghana is replaced by the larger Mali Empire. And Mali, that's Mansa Musa, that's the guy who goes on a Hajj to Mecca, and while he's going through, he goes through Egypt, and Mali's such a rich place that he devalues gold in Egypt because he gives so much out in the form of alms while he's there. Then after that, you have the Songhai, which are very big. Yeah, so lots of big Western African countries, and those are formed because of trade, which allows them, to prosper. So another civilization you have is down in the southeast. Great Zimbabwe was one of the earliest ones. They have very high stone walls which still exist today, and it's an archaeological thing. It's very interesting. And let's see, any other big things to hit on. So there's this Moroccan guy, Ibn Battuta, who travels around Africa and looks at some of the Muslim civilizations. So one of the things about AP World is there is a transmission of religion via trade. Christianity is less by trade, more by proselytizing along trade routes in the Roman Empire. But like Buddhism especially spreads via trade, and Islam spreads via trade. There's the initial Islamic conquests of North Africa and the Middle East, but then it spreads by trade down to, we don't have it on the map, but that's how it spreads to Indonesia, and that's how it spreads to so West Africa, like southern part of West Africa. So yeah, Ibn Battuta goes and he interacts with some of the Muslim populists, or something like the new Muslim populists of West Africa, and they're different because, of course, in history, whenever there's like a large barrier in between two groups, like unique cultures come from that. Say the Incans were very different from their Mesoamerican counterparts because of the Andes Mountains. The Malinese had a very unique way of doing Islam because they were kind of separated from the rest of the Muslim world. Similarly, Ethiopia, the descendants and the people who follow Axum and Meroe, they have a different form of Christianity. Like the Ethiopian Bible, I believe, don't quote me, Protestant Bible has about 60, 65, 66 books, and the Ethiopian Bible has about 80. So very different, but stuff can change. Yeah, so that's about it for Africa. And one of the things to remember is it's not like there aren't people in Central Africa. There are societies and civilizations going, they're known as non-centralized societies. And another thing that's different about them, about these, so that's why, we don't always have like, oh, it's an empire of Central Africa. And one of the things to also remember is there are matrilinear societies too. In most Western cultures we have descent and property goes through the father, but in African societies it goes through the mother. So that's a different system that they have in Africa. All right, I believe that is all for today. Thank you, and tune in next time.